Welcome back to Only Talk Sports, where we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Rose Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Now, today I've got my dad here to talk about some college basketball. We're going to be going over some blue bloods that are on the bubble right now, Kentucky, North Carolina, and Duke, and whether we think they're going to make the tournament or not based on their resumes and the remaining schedules. And it's going to be a lot of fun, man. What do you got? What do you think about these teams?
Uh, I think it's a lot different than it has been. That's for sure. I think that it's a very strange season. I'm not used to these teams being in the shape that they're in.
Yeah, they've definitely underperformed for a variety of reasons. Obviously with North Carolina and Duke, new coaches and everything. Kentucky had a couple down recruiting classes, and just they're not really getting things rolling right now. But I still think there's a really good shot that these teams will be able to make the tournament. But the team that probably has the best shot as of this time is the Duke Blue Devils. And right now they're being projected by most bracketologists as a 7 to a 9 seed, somewhere in there. So they're not safe, but they're not on the bubble either. And they're 18-8, and they're 9-6 in the ACC right now. And they do have some quality wins, probably more quality wins than the other two in Kentucky and North Carolina. But the remaining schedule, they have at Syracuse, who's a team that's 15-10. You would look at that game and say that's probably a game Duke needs to win if they're going to make the tournament. And then they play Louisville at home. Obviously, Louisville's not having a good season, and they should get that win. If they lose that game, that could drastically hurt their tournament resume. Virginia Tech is a team that's kind of been up and down. They've been playing better lately, but they're kind of on probably the wrong side of the bubble. But it's at home for Duke. Probably should win that game. And then they play NC State at home, and that's a big one because NC State is having a great season. They're playing a lot better. If Duke drops that game, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad loss, only if you don't lose to, like, Syracuse on the road to Virginia Tech. And then they end the season at North Carolina, and North Carolina's a team that's also on the bubble, and we're going to be getting into them as well. How many games do you think Duke has to win out of these last 5 to be safe, for the tournament?
I think they had to win at least 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as long as they win those games at Syracuse, Louisville, and Virginia Tech, those are the ones you got to win because those are the teams that are worse than you. Got to win those.
Yeah, that's true. And they can't get blown out by the 2 that they lose either, if they did lose. Yeah, they can't do that. So, I mean, but yeah, I think of all the 3, I think they're in the best shape. Because of who they got left. I mean, look at their schedule. It's not too bad, really.
Yeah, which is, a good and a bad thing because if you're playing – a lot of tough teams and you lose to them, you're not going to really drop. But if you lose them all, then obviously you can miss the tournament that way. But to your point, playing an easier end of the season of the schedule, it makes it easier for you to possibly, be able to get those wins, and you'll have enough wins to make the tournament. But if you do drop one of these games, then that is, horrible, and it's going to completely destroy your resume. Like you said, I think 3 of these, last 5, as long as they're against the teams that are, below them, like Syracuse, Louisville, Virginia Tech, I think they'll be fine because NC State and UNC would not be bad losses. I think Duke would be fine. They'd probably get in around a 10 or a 9 seed. But if they want to do better than that, then they need to win more of these games, 4 or even all 5 of them if they want to move up.
I agree.
I do think that Duke overall is fairly safe. And the roster overall, I mean, they've been playing better. Their best player this season has been Kyle Filipowski. He's played really well, and now they've got Tyrese Proctor, back from injury, Dariq Whitehead back from injury. I think Duke should be able to make the tournament. Do you think Duke will make the tournament?
I think Duke will make the tournament, but I think that it all runs through Roach, Jeremy Roach. I think that he's the trigger guy, and I think he has to control the game. That's what I think.
So we both agree that we do think that the Duke Blue Devils will make the NCAA tournament. So our next team here, not as comfortable and safe as the Duke Blue Devils, who is barring a complete collapse should make the tournament. The Kentucky Wildcats, they're 17-9 and they're 8-5 in the SEC, and on paper that looks good because 17-9 it's not a bad record. I mean, we've seen teams in the past that are 17-9 that are 4 and 5 seeds right now, and even this year, I mean, there's teams with 8 or 9 losses that are like 4 and 5 seeds in the tournament. I think Iowa State is like 8 losses, Indiana's 8 losses, they're like a 5 seed. So what's the problem with Kentucky, though? They don't have quality wins at all. The only win that's really good is at Tennessee. And besides that, they just don't have great wins on the resume. And that South Carolina loss really hurt as well because that kind of counteracts that great win. But you look at the remaining schedule. They play Tennessee at home. And that is huge because if you can get that win, especially with Tennessee coming off of a game where they just beat the #1 team in Alabama, it could be a letdown game for the Volunteers. It's at home at Rupp Arena. This is a huge game for Kentucky.
I agree completely. And I mean, I think they can beat them and everything, but I mean, they're going to have to get on it and play their A game because if not, they will lose that game.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, if you do lose, not going to really hurt your resume. But when you are a team like Kentucky that just doesn't have the quality wins at this time, then you kind of need a game like this to boost your resume.
Now, if they do win that game and everything, I mean, they're definitely on the right track. If they pick up a couple more wins, I think they can get in at 20 wins or even 21. But I mean, it would be big if they win that.
I completely agree. If they beat Tennessee, I'm not saying that they're safe or a lock for the tournament just yet. They still have to do more. But if they do beat Tennessee, that drastically improves their chances. And instead of it being like a 50-50 shot, it's more like a 75-25 chance that they will make the tournament. But to me, though, even almost a more important game than the Tennessee game at home is at Florida. And I think what makes this game tricky is because playing in the swamp is really, really tough. But something has made this game a bit easier. Colin Castleton just broke his hand, and that is very unfortunate for the Gators.
Yeah.
And you look at this game, whether Kentucky beats Tennessee or not, I mean, this is an important game because Kentucky historically has had struggles at Florida. And if Kentucky beats Tennessee, you can't afford to lose this game because of the fact you have that win, so it kind of offset and you're kind of back where you are. But if you lose to Tennessee, Kentucky has to win at Florida. And I do think with Colin Castleton being out, it's going to be a little bit easier, but it's still going to be a tough game.
I agree completely. But, yeah, that definitely helps Kentucky a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. Their next game is Auburn at home, and this is another game that, it's at Rupp Arena. On paper, they're probably going to be favored. They should win this game. Auburn's been kind of up and down this season, even though they're definitely in better shape for the tournament than Kentucky. But I think that, like, if you split these next two games, like, just say you lose to Tennessee and you win at Florida, this is probably a game you still have to have. If you sweep, Tennessee and at Florida, you can drop this game. You can lose and you'll be fine. But if you split the games, then you need to win this one. And if you lose both Tennessee and at Florida, then this becomes an absolute must win. Have to win.
I agree completely. It's going to be interesting. I mean, Florida's the best shot, I guess, then Auburn. Tennessee's a toss-up. So.
And then their next game after Auburn is Vanderbilt at home. You have to win that one. Vanderbilt, they're decent this year. They don't have Scottie Pippen anymore, junior. They're not playing as well as they were last year, but they're 14-12, and they've been sneaky, and they even beat Tennessee. So they're capable. But Vanderbilt was at home. This game's at Rupp. So Kentucky, if they're going to make the tournament, have to beat Vanderbilt.
Absolutely. I agree.
Mm-hmm. And then the last game is really tough. At Arkansas, Kentucky's already lost to Arkansas at home by like 15.
Yeah.
So, I mean, depending on what Kentucky does in the previous 4 games is going to determine whether this game they have to have or not. I think if Kentucky's able to win 3 of the next 4 games, then they can drop Arkansas.
Yeah.
Because they get 20 wins. But if they only win 2 of the next 4, then you have to beat Arkansas to be in better position.
I agree completely. Yeah, that one kind of. Evans got to scare the Wildcats is all I think I can say.
So out of these next 5 games, how many games do you think Kentucky has to win to make the tournament?
I think they can get in 20, 21 wins.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. So to put them at 20 wins or 17-9 now, they have to win 3 of the next 5, and then they would have to, to be really safe at 21 wins, win at least a game in the SEC tournament. What will be dicey is if they win 2 of these next 4 and they're 19-12.
Yeah.
And then they're going to have a game in the SEC tournament, and then that they'd have to win that game to put them at 20. So then you'd have to win 3 of the next at least 7 games. If you lose that last game and they're 20-13, it could be, right on the cusp. In Kentucky, they'll have that brand appeal, so maybe they'd squeak in, but still, it's going to be extremely tough. Do you think at the end of the day Kentucky will make the tournament or not? I
think Kentucky gets in as well. Yes, I do.
Now, for me, this one's really, really tough because of the fact that Kentucky's playing, up and down. They've been solid at times, but they did just get a big win at Mississippi State.
Yep.
That's a game I actually possibly thought they might have lost because of the fact Mississippi State's been decent and they've struggled on the road. But judging that they beat Mississippi State, if they play like they did in that game, I think they can win 3 of their next 5. If they win at Florida, they beat Auburn, and they beat Vanderbilt, and drop the Tennessee, Arkansas games. And if they just win their first game in the SEC tournament, I think they will make the tournament. So I will agree with you. Kentucky will make the tournament, but it's going to be by the skin of their teeth.
Absolutely. I agree completely.
They got the roster to do it. I mean, Oscar Tshiebwe, I mean, he's not playing like he was last year, but he's still really, really good.
He is.
He's taken for granted. And, I mean, they've gotten some improvements from Chris Livingston as the season's gone along. Kassan Wallace is really solid. He's going to be a one-and-done, great player. And Jacob Toppin, consistency from him is going to be key. He's a good player, but he's not consistent.
That is true. And, I mean, like I said, they somehow, some way, too. I mean, I really haven't understood this, why they haven't really had Wheeler in there at all either. I mean, I know it's because the point guard situation, the guy's better for sure. But, I mean, still he's quick and he knows how to run the floor.
And that's another thing for Kentucky. They have had some injuries this year. Wheeler's been banged up, and when he's played, he's been kind of up and down. But he is a true point guard, and it is tough when you have a guy like Kassan Wallace who is capable of running the point, playing position that's not really his position. So it's going to be interesting, but like we both said, I think Kentucky finds a way to make the tournament. But the last blue blood on this list is North Carolina, the Tar Heels. Yeah. They're in the last 4 in just like Kentucky. Both these teams are barely on the right side of the cut line, and I would argue North Carolina's in worse shape. There's some brackets that don't even have them in more than Kentucky. Like if we did this before Kentucky won at Mississippi State. I would argue that Carolina might have been in a little bit better shape than Kentucky, but since Kentucky got that road win, Kentucky's kind of past Carolina.
Yep.
And even though Carolina's hanging on by a thread in a lot of brackets, they've slipped out of a few. North Carolina's 16-10, and they're 8-7 in the ACC. And unlike Kentucky, who at least has that win at Tennessee, Carolina has no quad 1 wins. They have absolutely nothing on the resume. Their best win at the time was Ohio State, but they've tanked. Ohio State has. So North Carolina, they don't have any bad losses like South Carolina, like Kentucky does. So that helps Carolina. They have no bad losses, but they just don't have any good wins. So they're essentially beating who they should, and they're losing to everyone else. And that's not going to get it done if they want to make the tournament. If you look at their remaining schedule, they play at NC State next. And that is really difficult because even though Carolina did beat NC State at home, now you have to travel on the road at the Wolfpack. That's going to be a tough game.
That's going to be a really tough game. And, I mean, they NC State's always really, really tough there. So, I mean, I don't know. I think Carolina's got their hands full.
The next game, they have at Notre Dame. And if Carolina does lose at NC State, the at Notre Dame game becomes a must-win. If you drop that game, then North Carolina is suddenly probably way on the outside of the bubble.
Yep.
And even though I wouldn't still say that they're completely out, even at that point, they're almost about out of chances. They have to beat Notre Dame because Notre Dame's not having a good season. That's why Mike Bray, unfortunately, is resigning.
Yep, I agree. And, I mean, they always play Carolina good. So, I don't know.
And then the next game, just say if they split those 2 games, which they should at worst. I mean, if you lose both, then this game's an absolute must-win. But you would assume they would at least split and beat Notre Dame. They play Virginia at home. In North Carolina and Virginia's just a bad matchup for North Carolina because North Carolina is a get-up-and-down team, especially when Roy Williams was the head coach. They still are an up-and-down team. They kind of seem to have, slowed the tempo down a bit, which I don't like. I like Carolina when they're up and down the floor. But Virginia is the slow it down. We're going to take all 30 seconds of the shot clock, grind the game, make it a 50s and low 60s scoring game. That's how Tony Bennett's had so much success. So this is just a bad matchup for Carolina. It helps out that it's at home, and I'm sure the Tar Heel faithful will, come out and, make it tough for Virginia. That's going to be just a really, really tough game.
Yeah, I agree. And, I mean, I don't even know if being at home is going to be enough to beat Virginia because Virginia is a good team.
Mm-hmm. And then after that, I mean, again, as you just said, Virginia is really tough.
Yeah.
They play at Florida State, and this is another must-win. Can't drop this game.
No, you can't.
Can't lose to Notre Dame or Florida State because even though Leonard Hamilton and Florida State's usually really, really good, they're having a bad season this year.
They are. If they lose that game, you might as well just forget it.
Mm-hmm. and then they end the season with aforementioned Duke,
Yeah.
their rivals at home this time. You don't think you're not going to want to get a season sweep, Duke, allowing them to win both games. I think Carolina, they should play really hard this game. Usually both, games, even home or away, are really competitive. So Carolina needs this one, especially if they only win against Notre Dame and Florida State. You need some quality win. And Duke, even though they're not Duke of old, is still a quality win. So Carolina has to play hard against their rivals.
Yeah, they do. If they get blown out and they drop 2 or 3 of the games, they're done. They're not going to make it.
So out of the remaining schedule, how many games do you think Carolina is going to win out of these last 5 games?
I think they'll win 2, maybe 3, but I think they win no more.
I agree with you. I mean, for sure, the 2 games are at Notre Dame, at Florida State. Got to win, should win. But that's going to put Carolina, if they only win those 2 games, at 18-13 and 10-10 in the ACC. And even though Carolina is a blue blood and a brand name team, they would have no quality wins at all. And that you can't get in the tournament with 0 quad 1 wins. It's never happened before. I think the worst that's ever happened is like a team with 1 quad 1 win, and it was like a mid-major that was like 25-4, had a great record. But with the Carolina being at 18-13 with no quad 1 wins, that's not enough. So if they're 18-13, they'd have to probably win 2 games in the ACC tournament to have a chance. Now, if they win 3 games, which I think is possible, because if you beat Notre Dame and beat Florida State and you beat your rivals Duke, who I think Carolina will really play hard in that game, they'll be 19-12, 11-9 in the ACC, and at least have a decent win. That would, make Carolina, on the cusp, because they would say, well, they have the win over NC State at home, they have the Duke win at home. Those are decent wins, even though I think both will be outside of quad 1 because they were at home and the net, is not friendly to either team. Maybe Duke would be a quad 1 barely, but that would put them at 19-12, and it would put them 11-9. Like I said, that's French. You're like right there, and to me, I'd still think possibly be on the outside. So with all these scenarios, do you think North Carolina will make the tournament or not?
What do you think?
It's close. I mean, Kentucky and Carolina are flip-flops to me because you want to think all 3 of these teams are going to make the tournament because they're blue bloods and they got talent and they're going to figure it out. But also, you just feel like one of these teams isn't going to make it either. Like, one of these teams is going to find a way to miss the tournament. Duke looks, for the most part, like they're okay, even though there is some question marks. Kentucky, they won at Mississippi State. That helps them out and gets them in a little bit better footing. But North Carolina, no good wins. They haven't been playing well, and they haven't really, shown that they're starting to play better. I think possibly they can miss the tournament. I still think there's a chance all 3 of these teams make the tournament. But if I had to guess right now, as of, mid-February, the way these teams are playing, Carolina's going to be the one that misses the tournament.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, they may surprise us. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, they do find ways to get the job done, but I mean, it's very, very shaky. I don't know. I would probably say no either.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if I was to, pick, just out of nowhere, if someone asked me, do you think all 3 of these teams will make the tournament? I would say yes. Just because of history, the way these teams perform, they're going to find a way. But like I said, and like you said, of these 3 teams, if one of them's going to miss it, it's going to be Carolina.
Yeah, it's going to be Carolina.
They're not playing well right now, but you never know. They could, like you said, surprise us and find a way. They got the talent. Armando Bacot, he's still a really good player. Caleb Love, all he's got to do is just get hot, start making threes.
And he can get hot.
They could be good. RJ Davis has been solid. They still have the players. Pete Nance just hasn't been what Brady Manick was last year, and that's been a big storyline there.
That's right.
But if they can just get consistent production, from Pete Nance, and he starts playing better, maybe more to the Brady Manick level. And if Caleb Love starts knocking threes down, I could see Carolina making the tournament. But they do have the toughest path. And like I said, if there's going to be a team that misses, it's going to be them. But it's going to be very interesting to see at the end of the day what all the 3 of these teams do. Obviously, Duke's in the best shape. Kentucky and Carolina are on the cusp. But it's going to be really interesting to see. And I'm really looking forward to, March Madness. As we get, right before March Madness, all these teams are trying to get wins to make the tournament. It's going to be really interesting to see. And I'm looking forward to seeing which teams make it and which teams don't.
It's going to be real fun like it always is. And I mean, all three all three, I'll be watching them because, I mean, I'm partial to all of them in a sense. So, especially Carolina. But this has been an interesting season for Carolina, especially since they almost won the whole thing last year. I mean, it's sad how it's gone for them this year.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the way they played, you think that they come back and just do so much better, but sometimes it's just high expectations and they get to you and you don't perform as well, or just the new addition Pete Nance just doesn't mesh like Brady Manick did, and just for whatever reason Baycott's had some injuries earlier in the year. Just all the reasons and more, just why they've been struggling and why these other two teams have been struggling. Duke's had a lot of injuries, even Kentucky, but overall they just haven't played as well. But like you said, it's gonna be really interesting to see. And like I said, I'm looking forward to March Madness, seeing who makes and who don't. But thanks for coming on here, Dad. Talking some college basketball today, the Blue Bloods, and whether we think we're going to make the tournament or not. It's a lot of fun. Hope to have you on again soon to talk some more basketball or football or whatever we talk about. And subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you guys think about these teams and which teams you think are going to make the tournament out of the Blue Bloods. If Kentucky, Carolina, or Duke will make or miss the tournament. We'll see you next time.